July 4th. None of you got anything better to do next week. You want to be here. You don't want to miss next Sunday. Shiloh and his band are going to be with us, and they're going to be leading us in worship in English and in Hebrew. It's important that you come because there's a little secret that many of you don't know, that there's actually a language you're going to probably be speaking and singing in eternity, and it's not English. It's the language that our Lord spoke. So you can get a head start in learning to worship the Lord in his mother tongue next week. So we're very excited. That video is taken actually at the Feast of Tabernacles celebration in Jerusalem. It's a celebration that Bonnie and I have been part of for a couple of decades. When we lived there, we helped sort of be part of the team there with that. And so I don't know Shiloh personally, but I know some of the members of his band and some other people. And it's actually a wonderful, through a strange series of events, that they actually happened to be in Williamsburg, and they offered to come to our church. So we're very excited that they're going to be, as part of their tour throughout the United States, that they're doing to raise awareness of what God's doing in the land of Israel. We're really excited to be able to let them minister to us. And you really want to be here. Come here early because they're going to lead worship, so that means it starts at 10:30. If you come at 10:55, you'll miss a lot of it. But it's a great privilege. We live in a season where we as a generation, we've seen the rebirth of the nation of Israel. You can go actually visit the land of Israel. You can get on a plane and go see it. I don't think any of you realize what kind of privilege that is. For most of human history, and certainly for most of church history, that has not even been a conceivable option for anyone. We can walk those streets, we can touch those stones. Some of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time have been discovered in the last decade in the land of Israel. And they're still discovering them every few months. But one of the things that I've taken many people and many churches and many pastors to Israel, and I've walked with them through those places. And it's incredible. The Bible, as everyone says, the Bible comes alive. It all comes off the pages of the book. But at the end of it, they always say the thing that impacts them most is meeting the people. Because he's not the God, he's the God of the living, not the God of the dead. And God is mostly and most powerfully demonstrated through the lives of his people and through the lives of the lives of the people that he touches. And so it's the very people of Israel speak of God's enduring faithfulness to his promises. They testify to his enduring power, his enduring goodness, his incredible consistency throughout generation after generation, that he is able to hold them. And the purpose of really this series this summer that we're entering into is just that to let you know that when we enter the pages of the New Testament and we see the life of Jesus in the New Testament, it's not out of any context. It stands on the shoulders of everything that comes before. And if we don't understand the foundation upon which the gospel is built, we will not actually understand the gospel of Jesus Christ. We'll not understand what it is he did for us when he died on the cross. And so we're going to step back 3,500 years to the foot of Mount Sinai in the wilderness. The context, for those of you here last week, we spoke about it a little bit. The context is that the children of Israel have been slaves in Egypt. They have, for 400 years, they've been enslaved. They're a people. They have an ethnic identity, but they don't really have a cultural identity or a civic or a religious identity. They're just people who are enslaved. And God comes down in a very powerful way. And he calls Moses to lead them out of Egypt, but through the mighty acts of sending plagues upon the Egyptians, and then finally taking them to the edge of the Red Sea and parting the Red Sea and drowning the Egyptian chariots as they chase them across. And they find themselves on the other side of that body of water in the wilderness. They're free. They're free from slavery, but they have no idea who they are. They have no idea what it really means. And God takes them to the foot of Mount Sinai, and there he appears to them. He has an appointment with his people. And through the earthquake and the thunder and the fire, He demonstrates his power and his presence. He actually inscribes on tablets of stone the very nature of his character. He lets them know who he is and how they can worship him. He ushers them into a relationship with him on Mount Sinai. And one of the things that we've got to realize, we've heard, many of us have heard throughout our lives of we call them the 10 Commandments. But actually, in Hebrew, they call them the 10 words. It's interesting. There's something that happens when God describes, this is who I am, and this is how you can have a relationship with me. Changes everything. And we sometimes look back on that, and we just think it's a series of rules, and it's a series of limitations. But this isn't just about telling you to respect your parents more, although some of you, that probably would help. Or to limit your sexual expression to the context of a male and female marriage relationship. That's not the purpose of it. What these 10 things do is they prescribe all human experience. They circumscribe all human experience, and they teach us about what's inside. They teach us about the sinfulness. These 10 commandments hold up a mirror to our own inner darkness, in order, as Paul says in Galatians, to lead us to the cross of Jesus Christ, where God's righteous judgment upon the sinfulness and the wickedness of humanity is fully expressed and poured out, not on you or on me, but upon the body of his own Son. It's the place where his law and his mercy meet. And the purpose throughout all of the Bible, the purpose of God's journey and God's dealing with his people has been to get those 10 things off the tablets of stone onto the tablet of your heart and my heart. So last week we read from Exodus chapter 20. And I put it in your bulletin for you right at the top. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. It's with these words that he introduces the people of Israel to the reality that he's not just one of many. He's not just the most powerful God or the latest God or the new shiny thing in the great pantheon of all the gods of the world. But he is the only true God. And if we worship him, the one true God who's above all created things, then that changes everything. It changes everything for you. It changes everything for me. That he's one God. There's no other God. There's no other God besides him. There's no other God before him. There's no other God. There's no other God that comes close to him. And as we go through these 10 things, here in the pages of Exodus chapter 20, you shall not make for yourselves a carved image or any likeness of anything that's in heaven or above or on the earth beneath you. Verse 7, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Verse 8, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Verse 12, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land the Lord God has given you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, you shall not covet your neighbor's house or his neighbor's wife or his male servant or his female servant or his ox or his donkey. And when people saw that and they saw the thunder and they saw the lightning and they saw the mountain smoking, it says, then the people were afraid and trembled. Why? Because God had demonstrated that he's a God who requires something of his people. He's a God who actually demands holiness from his people. And in these 10 things, we understand something about who God is, that there's no other God besides, there's one God. There's only one way to truly worship him. There's no way he won't broker any other idols around him. There's one name that is above every name. You've got to be careful how you treat that name and how you respond to that name. There's one day above every other day that you honor. He's given us all the days of our life, but he expects us to set aside time for him. as the first and the greatest priority in our lives. There's one family. The whole of human existence is described and is perpetuated through the family unit, a mother and a father who together can procreate and produce children. And that is the model that God has ordained to produce peace and security and safety and prosperity and blessing to the people of earth. There's one life. We're all given one life. We only get one. And it's precious. It's sacred. You don't take it from someone else. Not because you want something. Thou shalt not murder, he says. There's a sanctity of life created in his image. There's one union. There's a sanctity of marriage. That's why adultery is forbidden, because it's sacred in the eyes of God. There's this one kind of law of the right of human self-determination, that what you earn, you get to keep. That I don't just get to steal your stuff because I don't like you, or because I think I'm better than you, or I think I'm more deserving from you. It's actually one of the foundational principles of human interaction and the way society has to grow. There's one truth. There's not a truth for you and a truth for me. I can't stand in the court of law and say, well, this is my truth, and I'm standing on it. There is actually such a thing as objective truth. You shall not lie and bear false witness against your neighbor. Friends, turn off the telly. I mean, if you want to honor the ninth commandment, you probably have to turn off the TV news. Because we live in a generation where people lie all the time and think nothing of it. Thou shalt not covet. One desire for what God has given me, not what he's given somebody else. And these are the things that describe God. These are the things that outline his character, outline his dealings with his people. He's the one God who brings you out of Egypt. And I want you to turn with me to, we can spend the bulk of our time today in Deuteronomy chapter 5. In Exodus, we hear the description of these 10 things. We see the children of Israel standing there by the mountain and God defining, this is how you're going to live before me. This is how you're going to become a people before me. This is how you're going to walk before me. And then after the 40 years they've been wandering in the wilderness, Moses brings them back together. He says, remember these things. And in Deuteronomy, we see him retelling a new generation. This is what I told you. This is how I led you. This is what I instructed you. And I'm going to read from Deuteronomy chapter 5. It says this, and Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, hear, O Israel, the statutes and the rules that I speak in your hearing today. And you shall learn them and be careful to do them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. Not with our fathers did the Lord make this covenant, but with us who are all of us here alive today. The Lord spoke with you face to face at the mountain, out of the midst of the fire, while I stood between the Lord and you at that time, to declare to you the word of the Lord. For you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up into the mountain. And he said, I am the Lord your God, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. It's interesting because we see the description of this God as a God of covenant, a God who keeps promise, a God who's made promises to our fathers and our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers. He's made promises and he has kept those promises. I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, who brought you out of slavery. I'm the God who speaks face to face to my people. I'm a God who wants a relationship with my people. I'm a God who's personal, who's knowable, my will. I haven't left you swinging in the wind trying to figure out who I am. I've described to you who I am and how you can live before me and how you can please me and how you can honor me with your lives and with the time you have here on earth. You know, these words that I spoke, he carries on in verse 22. He says this, these words the Lord spoke to the assembly at the mountain in the midst of the fire, the cloud, and out of the thick darkness with a loud voice. He added no more to them, and he inscribed them. He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. He just gave you these, and he didn't add any more to it. It's not like this is an impossible list. On one level, he wants you to know who he is. He wants you to live before him. He's a God who wants to be known by you and wants to have a relationship with you. He's a God who shows his glory and his greatness. And what does that mean for you and what does it mean for me? It means that I'm without excuse. I have no excuse. In fact, the Apostle Paul picks this up in the beginning of Romans. If you want to keep your finger there in Deuteronomy 5 and flip over to Romans chapter 1 in the New Testament, it's after the book of Acts, you'll find it. Paul says this. Paul makes his opening manifesto on the description of the gospel of Jesus Christ using these words. He says it in verse 16, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith." I was reading this with someone just on Friday, and it's amazing because the question then is, the question comes from this: well, what is the gospel? What is the good news? And Paul's about to tell you, the good news doesn't begin well. It begins like this: "For the wrath of God," verse 18, "is revealed from heaven against all the unrighteousness, ungodliness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God, He has shown to them. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks to Him, and they became futile in their thinking. And their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of an immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things." You see, God shows His glory and His greatness in the description of His character. "You shall have no gods before me. You shall hold life sacred. You shall hold marriage sacred. You shan't covet. Don't covet the things that don't belong to you. Don't steal. Don't lie." That's how God describes Himself to us. And what happens is those words just rip our hearts apart because we cannot live according to them. We're not able. And the wrath of God is revealed against us because we're left standing naked without excuse. We have no excuse. You see, in the fire, in the earthquake, and the thunder on the mountain, the parting of the Red Sea, the plagues on Egypt, what happens is we've seen God's hand. We know He's real. And every time I choose to do something for myself that I know is dishonoring to God, I'm suppressing that truth within my heart. And I do it, and you do it, and our kids do it, and their kids will do it. Because there's something in the human condition that our hearts are futile, our minds have been darkened. We deceive ourselves and we kid ourselves that this time is not going to matter. This time I'm going to get away with it. This time no one's going to see. This time no one's going to care. And that's the human condition. The human condition is that we know how to live, but we can't live according to what we know. We know that life is sacred. And we know that we shouldn't murder someone, whether it's in the street or in the womb. We know that people's work is holy, that we shouldn't be stealing what we didn't earn. We know that marriage is a covenant before God, but that doesn't stop us wanting and lusting after people that are married to other people. And we know that with one word, God created everything we see and that exists in the world. It says that in the beginning of Genesis, and yet we use our words untruthfully all the time. We just shade them. We twist them. You see, these things are plain to us. God has revealed Himself to us. He's shown Himself. You know, the fact that there is one God who is far above us is clear every time we go out and look at the stars in the sky. It's clear every time we hear the cry of a newborn and we look at it and we think this is not by accident that this incredible act of creation has come into being. We look at the flight of an eagle, or anytime we take a walk outside, we see the beauty and the wonder and the incredible majesty of a God who created it all. And we are without excuse. We can't put our fingers in our ears and pretend we haven't seen what we've seen, or heard what we've heard, or know what we know. Deep in our hearts, we understand there's a difference between right and a difference between wrong. And we spend our lives trying to suppress that thought so that we might somehow justify to ourselves the way we want to live our lives. This is the gospel, folks. It's hard news. inscribed on those 10 commandments. It rips us up. It convicts us. It exposes the nakedness of our hearts. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. And the Lord who brings you out, the Lord who delivers you from slavery, who delivers you from the slavery of your sin, of your old life, of your old way of thinking, your futile thinking, your foolish heart, your darkened mind. He brings you out through the Red Sea of redemption on dry land. And there's only one God who can do that. You see, many of you may have tried this, but your money can't do that. You know, the finest wine can't do that. The best craft brewed beer can't do that. I wish it could, but it can't. The most exotic vacation can't do that. The best sexual experience can't do that. There's only one God who delivers you. There's only one God who brings you out. And why does he bring you out of Egypt? In order to set you free. His desire is to set you free from the slavery of your own wants and your own desires and your own futile thinking. And yet we spend our lives thinking that this God is against us. He's for us. He wants the best for us. He says this in verse 28. And the Lord, he heard your words. Moses is speaking to the people again. Verse 28 of Deuteronomy chapter 5. And he says this. Oh, I put it in your notes. Oh, that they had a heart such as this, always to fear me and keep all my commandments, that it might go well with them and their descendants forever. Oh, that my people would have a heart after me, that I could bless them, that they would follow me, that I could pour out my blessing upon them. This is the heart of God in giving us his commandments, that we might be free, that we might be blessed, that we might actually walk in the light of his presence. And so we don't look at it that way. We look at the law of God as a straitjacket. We look at it as a bunch of rules and do's and don'ts. We see it with the fight in the last 20 years, even in this nation, over the displaying of 10 commandments in public buildings. Why? Because the pagan mind sees it as a straitjacket, whereas we see it as the source of all human freedom. You see, it's as though we feel as though God, it's somehow unreasonable of God to expect any kind of behavior on our behalf. It's unreasonable for God to put any limitations upon our desires or our expressions or our affections. Surely I should be able to say anything I want. Surely I should be able to sleep with anyone I want. Surely I should be able to cover anything I want, get anything I want, twist whatever truth I think will serve my purposes, steal whatever I can when no one's looking. And yet the more we do these things, what happens? We become more and more enslaved to ourselves. We become more prone to anxiety and depression and despair. Is there a wonder why we're the most medicated society in human history? Is there any wonder? Why? Because we've abandoned the law of God and we've all set free to do everything we feel and want. You do you and go do what you want. It's really bad advice. But yet that's all you hear from everyone all the time. And what does it produce? Destruction, death, anxiety, depression, suicide. That's what it produces. Take a look at the world around you. Young, old, rich, poor. We've enslaved ourselves again. We've gone back to Egypt. I am the Lord your God who brought you out from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You see, when we fail to acknowledge he's the one who brought us out, we end up enslaved all over again. And there's an incredible moment in the Psalms, in Psalm 119. I just commend it to you. It's the longest psalm. It takes a while to read. But Psalm 119 is all about the beauty and the wonder of the law of God. In the old NIV version, it has this phrase, and verse 32, it says this. It says, I run in the path of your commandments, for you have set my heart free. I run in the path of your commandments, for you have set my heart free. God's law is about setting you free. It's not about enslaving you. It's not about limiting you. It's not about raining on your parade or cramping your style. It's about setting you free to be who He's created you to be. Why do we resist it? So, there's no way to find true freedom unless we let His finger inscribe His law upon our hearts. The Lord our God, He's the one who brings us out. He's the one who sets us free. And the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Now that may sound like a strange thing to say. It may seem like it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I don't think many of us don't realize it's one of the most profoundly significant phrases in the entire Bible. And we're going to read it here in Deuteronomy 6. If you just cast your eye down the page a little bit more, we're going to go to the beginning of Deuteronomy 6. I put it in your notes. And we're going to read together. It says this, "Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may do them in the land to which you are going over to possess it, that you may fear the Lord your God, you and your son and your son's son, by keeping all His statutes and His commandments, which I command you all the days of your life, that your days may be long. Hear therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well with you, that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. And these words that I command you this day shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk about them when you sit in the house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. And you shall bind them as a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And when the Lord your God brings you into the land that He swore to your fathers to give you, to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses filled with all good things that you did not fill, and cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and are full, take care lest you forget the Lord, the one who brought you out of the house, out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve. And by His name you shall swear. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the people who are around you. For the Lord your God is in the midst of you as a jealous God, lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you and He destroy you from off the face of the earth. There's going to come a day, He says, when you find yourself living in a land filled with all kinds of good things. Living in houses that you didn't build. How many of you built your own house? A couple of you maybe. Drinking water from reservoirs that you didn't dig. Eating fruit from grocery stores that you didn't stock the shelves for. Vineyards that you didn't plant. Olive trees that you didn't grow and tend. There's going to come a generation that's going to live in a land of complete abundance, filled with every good thing. And when you find yourself in that place, just remember one thing: don't forget the Lord your God. Don't forget the Lord your God who brought you here. Don't forget the one who's the source of all the good things in your life. What have we done, my friends? What have we done in this nation? We've not only forgotten Him, we've turned our backs on Him. We've stuck our fingers up at Him. We've rejected Him and everything He stands for. And we live in a place of such abundant blessing. Such abundant blessing like the world has never seen or known before. And yet we put our fingers in our ears and we suppress the truth that we know, that it comes from Him, that it belongs to Him. We haven't deserved it. We've done nothing to earn it. But He, in His loving kindness, has given and blessed and blessed and given and given and blessed over and over and over again. And we've forgotten the Lord who brought us out of the land of Egypt. We've forgotten the Lord who delivered us from the slavery of our sin and our selfishness. You shall love the Lord your God, He says, with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. And these words I command you today shall be on your heart and remain on your heart. Tie them around yourselves. Put them on your doorposts. When should you talk about them? Well, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you lie down, when you sit at the table, when you drive down the street. Pretty much all the time. You need to be talking about these things. Why? Because the Lord your God is the source. He is the only God. He will have no other gods before him. You know, in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus finds himself, as he does oftentimes, in a confrontational discussion with the Pharisees and the scribes. It's in the last week of his life. He's on the Temple Mount complex in Jerusalem. And it says this in verse 34, hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. And one of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question, Teacher, what is the greatest commandment of them all? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Everything that follows hangs on these words. Everything we have hangs on the law that he's inscribed on the tablets of stone. And we can't get to him unless we first face up to our inability to live up to these. There's no way to get to heaven. There's no way to find yourself in relationship with God if you refuse to acknowledge the things that he has told you to do. And yet here's the problem. We can't live up to them. We can't live up to them. We can't ever fulfill them. Because even if I can fulfill the first 9, I like your BMW. And it's really hard not to think that it would be nice to drive your BMW. And that's the reality. I mean, that probably happens to us about 6 times a day, most of us in this building. Here's the reality. Because at the end, the very final commandment is a commandment about the attitude of your heart. And I can do the right things with my life most of the time. But what's going on inside my heart? My word. If only you knew. You'd never show up to church again. Because the truth is there's wickedness in my heart just like there's wickedness in yours. And just like I wouldn't want the depths of my heart to be displayed on this screen, you wouldn't want that either. Because the truth is, I can't get there by myself. I need him to redeem me. I need him to write his law on my heart that I might not sin against him. I need to be transformed by him. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. This is not just any phrase. It's the most single consequential phrase in the Old Testament. It is the phrase on which hangs everything else that follows. Don't believe me? Ask a rabbi. When they were rounding up the Jewish people and putting them in cattle carts and taking them off the cattle carts at the ramp at Auschwitz-Birkenau and walking them into the gas chambers, the rabbis were saying and leading the people to say these words, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This is the creed of the Jewish people. This is the thing that they hang on to, that there is one God and we're not going to have any other God. We won't have any other God before you. We will worship you with all our heart and all our soul and all our mind and all our strength because you are the only true God. Many of you may not remember the story of Daniel Pearl, but he was a Wall Street Journal journalist I believe in Afghanistan in 2002, and he was abducted by the Taliban and beheaded very horrifically because he was Jewish. And his last words, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. This is not just a random phrase. I put it in your bulletin in Hebrew so you would know what it actually means. It's the fountainhead of all Jewish consciousness and culture. And it's the foundation of our understanding of the New Testament. Get me right here. Why do the Jewish people have a problem with Christians? Because they believe we worship three gods: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But it's not actually what happens when you get to the pages of the New Testament. You see something very different. In fact, this is exactly the challenge that is leveled at Jesus. If you want to look it up, it's in John 10. John 10:30. Jesus makes a statement to the Pharisees and the scribes, and he says, I and my Father are one. I spoke a little bit about it last week. And again, his opponents picked up stones to stone him. And Jesus said to them, I've shown you many good works from my Father. For which of these do you stone me? Are you stoning me because I healed the blind man? Are you stoning me because I raised someone from the dead? Are you stoning me because I healed a leper? What are you stoning me for? And they said, they replied, we're not stoning you for any of your good works. We're stoning you for blasphemy because you, a mere man, claim to be God. How does he claim to be God? Well, I and my Father are one. And we all know that the Lord, our God, the Lord is one God. So Jesus, by uttering the words that I and the Father are one, was saying something very powerful. He was saying that he was God in human form. He was claiming divinity upon himself. The Bible gives us no option that the Lord, our God, the Lord is one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. One God. When Jesus walked on earth, He didn't just represent the Father. He actually was God in human form. He was the incarnate God. And that same God took upon himself the punishment for your inability to live up to these 10 commandments. He took upon himself because he knew you would never be able to fulfill the requirements, the righteous requirements of the law in yourself. And he took the price. This is the one God who sets you free, the one God who demonstrates his great love for you by sending his Son to die, that his law might be inscribed upon the tablets of your heart. Would you pray with me? Lord, I just pray, Father, that these words will not just be words on a page. The words I've spoken won't just be lingering in the air, but your word would penetrate our hearts. And Lord, you would inscribe upon them the truth that we can have no other God before you. You're the only God. You're the one true God, and you stand far above all human existence. Lord, would you allow us to see you as you truly are? The one and only, high above. We have so many gods competing for our attention. But there is one God who brought us out of the slavery in Egypt, who brought us out of the slavery of our sin, who paid the price on the cross for our rebellion. And we worship you, the one true God, in this place today. We love you, and we worship you.